I've recently been thinking about some common threads and tropes that appear in superhero stories, and something that's consistently popped out to me is the presence of guns. From the first Detective Comics to the most recent Marvel blockbuster, guns have persistently been used as a weapon or a threat for both heroes and supervillains alike. I admit that when I first thought of the concept of this video, I was going to critique the use of bullets and guns in superhero stories, and while there are definitely things to say there, upon further thought I realised that there are equally good ways to portray their use as well. And like so many of my videos, one thought led to another, and suddenly I found myself with a lot to say about the topic. Usually I like to argue a point for these kinds of videos, but it looks like today it's going to be an exploration of something instead. Exciting. This video is of course going to be looking at things from a writing perspective, but even if you're not a writer and you're just interested in superhero stuff, then I'm sure you'll find something of use in here as well. So without further ado, I present On Bullets and Superheroes, a thematic exploration by John from the author's Anvil. Let's begin. So I don't think I need to give too much of a deep explanation and history on guns. They are ranged weapons that use an explosive shooting tube to fire projectiles, most of which are metal bullets. They are incredibly effective at hurting and killing people given the speed at which they fire said bullets. Early powdered rifles could hurl bullets at 120 meters per second, while modern firearms can conservatively fire at 1,200 meters per second. When someone gets hit by a bullet, it is not only incredibly painful, but also causes severe damage to the body. Again, I don't think I really need to go into too much detail. They are thus the primary weapons used by governments, militaries, and criminals all over the world, and it will probably remain that way for the foreseeable future. It is therefore pretty obvious why they feature so much in superhero stories. Comics and early superhero media was set in alternate realities of our world in the 1930s, and since then guns have stayed in their worlds to mirror ours. So what do guns bring to our superhero stories? Well, they are a way to provide tension for both the characters in the story and the audience experiencing said story. And given how powerful they can therefore serve as a measure of how powerful a hero or villain's powers are. I want to delve into each of these points a little more. If you've been on my channel for a while, you've probably heard me banging on about tension quite a lot. But for those who are new, however, let me give you a quick refresher. Tension is one of the most important emotions to evoke in an audience when composing a story. It is expectation, the not knowing of what will happen next, the thing that makes us worried about the characters we love, the thing that can make us feel frightened while experiencing a story. Storytellers create tension in order to keep their audiences engaged and make them interested in the story they're telling. Tension can be caused by many things, from not knowing whether two people will end up in a romantic relationship by the end of the story, to the sports team we've been rooting for facing off against a challenging team, or to a character facing off against a monster. Without tension, stories get boring pretty quick. So it's pretty clear where I'm going to go with this whole tension thing in regards to guns and superhero stories. Guns are a really quick and easy way to insert tension. They are quick to kill with, can be smuggled or put neatly into pretty much any scene, and in many countries are readily available to anyone. Whether a gun is pointed at our superhero, someone they care about, or even just a random bystander who they're trying to save, guns are an instantly recognisable threat that can create a lot of tension for both the characters and audience very fast. Well, I say that, but the effectiveness of how much guns actually do create tension depends on how the writer uses them. More on this later. Jumping into our second use of guns in superhero stories, the thing that I've noticed a lot is how guns are used as almost a litmus test for how strong a hero is. Again, it is easy to see why this is the case, as this links back to our first point. Guns are an easily understood source of danger and power, so they are therefore a good measuring stick to use for our understanding of a hero's power level. We can see how tough a character is by how well they soak up bullets. We can see how quick and agile a character is by how well they can dodge bullets. We can see how well a character can heal by how well they recover from bullets. And lastly, we can see how unique a character's powers are by how they interact with bullets. Other weapons, such as a crowbar or sword, just don't give the audience as much of an easy gauge of strength, as they are simply not as powerful within themselves. This is especially the case in modern superhero stories where characters have armor available to them. Now, I know body armor exists for guns too, but upon doing some research I actually discovered that even modern bulletproof vests are only bullet resistant, and that most of the time it doesn't stop injury from happening, especially from higher powered guns. Of course though, you would rather have a bulletproof vest on than not, but that's beside the point. Many people can survive being punched in the chest, even by people who are freakishly strong, but far fewer can survive being shot by a bullet in the chest. Guns are thus a really good way for writers to show the audience the capabilities and the strength of our heroes and villains. So we've covered the two main reasons why guns are used so much in superhero stories, and we can definitely see how they are effective. Guns should absolutely feature heavily in superhero stories, since at the end of the day, these stories are mirroring our world where guns feature heavily. But, as always, when it comes to storytelling, it's all about the execution, and so for the rest of this video, I want to talk about when guns have been used well and when they've been used badly. I want to first dig into the issues of bulletproofing heroes and when and where it works. A pet peeve of mine in superhero stories is when a hero is introduced as immediately being bulletproof. Remember what we said about tension and how important it is to keep the audience engaged. If you make your hero bulletproof, you are immediately taking away one of the most realistic dangers for them to overcome. Let's take this scene from the start of Black Panther, for example. It's set up really well, where T'Challa takes the time to covertly take out a couple of these militia without alerting the rest of the convoy. We've been shown that these bad guys are armed with guns and have seen nothing to suggest that they are special in any other way. So what we draw from this is that guns must pose a threat to T'Challa, otherwise he wouldn't bother to be so sneaky. But then this all gets quickly dispelled when he initiates open combat and proceeds to take out the militia with absolutely no problem. He is shot several times at point-blank range and isn't even knocked back. And just like that, the tension is over. We now understand that he is completely bulletproof. From now on, whenever we see a gun pointed at T'Challa, there is no tension for us to feel. Now, I know you're probably going to point out that he started off covertly so that there would be less people to threaten the hostages with, but if he was really concerned about that, then surely he would have just put himself in a position where he could take out the militia closest to the hostages first. It could have been a really nice character moment for him to purposely fight in front of the hostages, and namely Nakia, in order to show off his mad skills, but I digress. The point I'm making is that in this scene, the tension evaporates as soon as the first bullets glance off him. Another even more egregious example was actually in the latest Batman film, where Batman goes to the Penguins Club and has a fight with his thugs. Again, we start off really well, where Batman has a brawl with a few of them. The punches don't do very much to him, and he tanks an iron rod, but that's fine, because he's wearing armour, and at least the hits look like they're wearing him down a bit. And then we have this guy pull a gun on him, and Batman hesitates. The tension has risen. Badass Batman has hesitated under the barrel of a gun. How's he going to get out of this situation? His armour is good, but given how much mobility he still has in it, it can't be that strong. So the pistol shot could have been a lucky miss, but that shotgun blast to the back definitely hits and seems to barely cause him an inconvenience. And now our tension is gone for the rest of the film. If Batman can tank a point-blank shotgun hit to the back, then that means any thugs he goes up against pose no threat to him. Batman has pretty much no chance of losing any fight he's in unless another weapon is introduced later on in the film, which there isn't. This is an easy trap that I think a lot of writers fall into when they want to make their superheroes badass or tough. Let's make them bulletproof so that the audience knows how strong they are and so they can perform cool acrobatic moves on screen. But really, at the end of the day, this just turns the fight scene into eye candy with no real tension nor substance. Don't get me wrong, rule of cool is important for super stories, but it should never come in the way of ruining tension. I personally think it's actually way more badass when a non-bulletproof hero takes down a group of thugs with guns. They don't have that safety net, they have to think strategically, and their victory is ultimately way more satisfying to watch. As I've alluded to, a possible fix for making your fight scenes have tension again is to introduce a weapon that can hurt the hero. Black Panther kind of did this with vibranium weaponry, but this is unfortunately pretty inconsistent throughout the film. Going back to Batman, I think there is definitely room for him being bullet resistant, but he should definitely have weaknesses. Batman Arkham Knight actually demonstrated this really well, where it's established early on in the game that the front of his chest is super well padded, while other places are still quite vulnerable. And even when he is shot in the chest, spoilers, there is still an impact, implying that if you emptied a clip into him, you'd be able to keep him at bay. Now I know what you're going to be thinking. Am I saying then that all superheroes who are bulletproof are inherently boring? That they can't have any tension attached to their stories? The answer is of course no, and I'm now going to look at a few heroes who are bulletproof and briefly explain how and why they maintain tension. So, Superman isn't called the Man of Steel for nothing. The guy is very bulletproof and is actually resistant to a lot of things. But as I explain in my Superman video essay, which you should totally go and watch, he has plenty of other weaknesses that more than make up for this. What I want to talk about here, however, is that good Superman stories don't build their tension through necessarily threatening Superman's physical well-being, but rather by threatening either wider humanity or threatening his place in the world. For all its faults, Smallville did a good job of this, where the tension in the show is not whether the young Clark can defeat the villain of the week, but whether he can successfully save everyone while maintaining his secret. Or in Superman vs. the Elite, the tension is not really whether the Elite can defeat Superman in a fight, but rather whether Superman can convince the world that his method of distributing justice is still legitimate. Again, go and watch my Superman video for more in-depth stuff about him, but for the purposes of this video, I want to stress the idea that being bulletproof is not important in a story about someone as powerful as Superman. The conflicts are simply different. Hulk is another hero who has superhuman resilience to most damage, including bullets, but again, let's look at the actual source of his conflicts. In the best Incredible Hulk stories, the conflicts are not with Hulk's well-being, but with how he affects those around him while he's Hulk. Unlike in the modern MCU, Bruce Banner traditionally has little to no control over the Hulk alter ego. Therefore, when he transforms into the Hulk and starts rampaging, the tension in the story is not only whether he can stop the bad guys, but also whether someone can stop him from killing people and destroying the space around him. The fact that he is bulletproof then actually adds to the tension in this particular scenario. Wolverine is an interesting one because although he is not bulletproof per se, his accelerated healing makes it so that it's tough to take him down with guns. But what is important to note is that while Wolverine can tank bullets, he's still got to be careful because they can knock him back and they still cause him a lot of pain. Hugh Jackman conveys this pain brilliantly in all the movies he's in, so we feel tension because we don't want a hero who we care about to be in pain. The big takeaway that I want to give you from these examples is that if you're going to have your superhero be bulletproof, you must either come up with another easily understood weakness that villains can exploit, or you must come up with a different source of tension for them. The last quick aside for when bulletproofing is okay is when your superhero is someone who faces intergalactic or alien threats. In this case then, the source of tension will be from how powerful the intergalactic threat is, but in that case, I probably wouldn't bother featuring guns from Earth at all. Let's just keep it to space lasers. But let's say you don't want to write a superhero who's bulletproof. How and when then should guns be used? Well, the main point I want to make here is that guns should be scary. If a hero or heroine is going into a situation that involves guns, then make them have to strategize about how to take them out quickly or quietly. Spider-Man, for example, could use his webs to disarm thugs from a distance and then go into close combat when he's sure that they've been taken out. Batman has his batarangs. Jean Grey has telekinesis. As we mentioned earlier, this is a way for heroes to get creative with their powers and skill sets. How they deal with the threat of guns can tell us a lot about how they approach problems. This can also be applied to a situation where a gun is pulled on them unexpectedly. Again, how they deal with this situation shows us the extent of their powers and the sort of person they are. I don't have that much more to say here, other than I think guns just need to be treated like the efficient killing machines they are. They should pose a formidable threat to any superhero who isn't bulletproof, and for goodness sake, they should also not be horribly inaccurate. You can get away with maybe one miss in a story, but if you have too many misses, then again the tension gets significantly reduced, as we subconsciously start believing that they're not as dangerous because of their inaccuracy. Guns only work in stories when they're dangerous. Guns are probably going to stay in our superhero stories for a long time, and for good reason. When written into a story properly, they can serve as both an easy source of tension for the characters and the audience, and as a demonstration of a hero's strength levels and showcase their skill set. However, for guns to remain effective towards non-bulletproof heroes, they must be written in a way where they're still intimidating. Heroes need to react to them appropriately, and preferably we should see the consequences of getting shot to hammer home how dangerous they are. And if you do want your hero to be bulletproof, then you must make sure that there is either another source of tension that can be created, or that there's another weapon that can be just as easily used against them. Guns should not be treated as just a generic prop within a story. Like any aspect of writing, more thought needs to be put into how they're used than one might think, but also like any aspect of writing, this is more than worth it if it means that superhero stories deliver the tension that an audience deserves. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this video has served as not only an interesting food for thought, but has also helped budding writers think about how they can use guns in their own story. This was a little bit different than what I usually do, so please leave a comment down below to let me know if it worked or not. If it did work for you and you want to hear more of my ramblings, then check out my other videos where we not only explore superhero storytelling but other aspects of writing too. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed the video, hope you have a fine day, and hope that you keep writing.